Welcome, children. I'm Pastor Livingston from the Holy Women's Church of Social Justice. Once upon a time, there was a man who lived in the forest with his wife, 2 sons and 2 daughters. The man, Buster, worked as a woodcutter. His 2 sons, Bruiser and Thumper, helped him in the forest. His wife was called Dorothy, and her 2 daughters were not given names. They were known as Bitch 1 and Bitch 2. Now it so happens that one year there was a drought, and the forest stopped growing, so Buster was not able to provide a living for his family. So he decided to prostitute his 2 daughters and his wife. He recruited his 2 sons to maintain an iron fist of discipline over the 3 women. The females were forced to have sex with numerous unknown and filthy men from all over the kingdom, and they were subject to all sorts of horrendous violent and degrading acts. As well as earning good money for the 3 males, they provided good entertainment for the men. The more brutal and hideous the treatment of the women, the more delighted the males were. Oh, how the women suffered and suffered! They were not given a moment of peace. For one, they were not earning money, lying on their backs. They were treated as slaves, serving the men through tear-stained eyes. The men were careful not to leave too many bruises, for they needed the women to look attractive to keep making money, to buy liquor and drugs. One day a cousin, called Creeper, came to visit Buster. He laughed and laughed when he saw how the women were suffering, and suggested more tricks the men could use to make the women suffer more. Buster and Creeper stayed up all night drinking and telling sexist jokes. They shared various atrocities that they personally had inflicted on women in the past. At one point, Buster was heard saying, "All I want to do is to suppress and dominate the women for my own patriarchal pleasure." Just as he was saying this, a magic dove was flying by the window and heard every word. That very same night, the magic dove returned to the house and visited Dorothy as she was crying herself to sleep. It said to her, "If your husband strikes you 5 times in a row, I will bestow upon you a very special magical power." Now it so happens that within 10 minutes of awakening the following morning, this condition had been met, because poor Dorothy was too slow in making Buster's breakfast. All of a sudden Dorothy could feel a wave coursing through her body. She had just received powers that her husband could only dream of. She raised her hands, and bolts of fire and steel sprang forth. Buster was torn to shreds by the flying steel. There was blood splattering the entire house. Then she turned to her evil sons and raised her hands. Then came forth bolts of lightning, severing her sons' hands and legs from their bodies. Blood was spraying 1,000 feet into the air. They bled to death within minutes. Afterwards, all 3 lifeless corpses were dragged outside by the now laughing and jolly women. Later that day, as the sun was setting, while the women were sitting on the porch, enjoying a cup of tea, they watched, with delight, the remains of the evil males being trampled by a stampede of buffalo. They laughed and high-fived as they saw the men being pulverized and pulped. Oh, how they laughed and laughed! And so, the women stayed in the cottage, living in peace and harmony. They offered solace to women in trouble from all over the kingdom, in what became known as the Safe House of STOMPER. The end. I'm Pastor Livingston, and I wish you a good night, with Jezreel and as love.